Okay. Okay, so right now we're just building the demo app, and it's just me and Ben. Say hi, Ben.
Hello, everyone.
Okay. So I don't know if I feel like I should be telling jokes or something. Um, yeah. Okay, there we go. You don't have to hear any of my bad jokes. Okay, CD demo. I'm going to open it with my Visual Studio Code. Okay, I'm going to close this. I'm going to close this. Okay. Oops. Actually, let me just let that happen. Okay. Okay, so here I am in Visual Studio Code. So I've basically just run create React app. So I'm going to run npm start. Make this a little bigger.
My environment is kind of messed up because when I run npm start, it launches. Then when I make a code change, it doesn't refresh, and it will give error messages. And then
Really?
I would more or less click on the F5 or after F5 it, and then we'll click on that refresh button. But it doesn't like it doesn't refresh on the fly every time I make a code change. And then instead would give me error messages.
You have to refresh the browser?
Yeah.
Huh. Okay. Well, we'll go through this, and then I'll have you share your screen, and we'll try to
Okay.
figure out, because I mean, it could be that could be happening for a couple reasons. So we'll troubleshoot it and see if we can get it working. But um, let's see. Okay, so this basically this page. Where do I find this?
Uh, where do you find that? That's in your under your source. It's
Okay.
on index.js
Okay. So
or,
index.
or app.js. Sorry,
Right.
app.
Right. So um, Mohit, how you doing?
Good. I just woke up from a little nap. I had a migraine.
Oh no, you feeling better?
Yeah,
Yeah,
feeling better.
I've had a not a real migraine, but a metaphorical migraine involving four-legged animals. So yeah, I
Oh God.
it'll be
Sorry
okay though.
about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so basically what we're doing is just I'm just building a React app, and we're just going to make something really basic just to figure out like what's going on, basically to understand props and state. Okay.
Okay.
So, so you're right to say that. So this is where like the kind of the root of our app, right? So index.js is how, if you go into public and index.html, right? That's how it all kind of happens behind the scenes, right? So we have this div with an ID of root. So if you look in index.js, it says document.getElementById, just plain JavaScript, and then it finds that root. So basically, React DOM.render, you pass it a React component, and then it renders it to the screen. So everything kind of gets nested inside of our app component, kind of like the little Russian dolls where, one is inside the other. I think that's probably a good analogy as to how it happens. But the actual stuff, like this right here, we look in app.js. Okay, so this is let me zoom out a little bit. So if I have this link to learn React, what line is this text on? Can you guys see it?
Mm-hmm. Mm. Um, I would say it's on line 18.
18, perfect. Yeah, so that's
Yeah.
the text. This is the anchor tag. So this is what they call JSX. So it looks just like HTML. It's syntactic sugar for HTML. It's not really HTML. It's behind the scenes. This is getting converted by a program called Babel into just plain JavaScript. But the idea is everybody, well, not everybody, but it's easier to write HTML than JavaScript, right? So the React's whole idea and its big selling point is you're just writing HTML in sort of a modified way. So we have our div, we have our header, which looks just like HTML, but we're able to sort of inject our JavaScript code into the JSX, okay? So I would recommend, if you haven't yet, just play with this, figure out like what's going on. Like if I take this and say, hey, new camp, right? Then it changes on the screen. Okay. All right. So, yeah. So just play with this and figure out what happens. Like, what happens if we take this class name out? Nothing, which is weird. I don't know why I didn't do anything. Maybe I need to refresh it. No. Yeah. Okay, so anyway, let's move on. So I'm going to take all this stuff out, and I'm just going to have it say app component. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and put the class name back so we have a little bit of styling. And why do I have to say class name instead of class?
Because it's a JSX thing.
Right. So it's basically it's not. This is one of the indicators that shows you this isn't HTML. This is JavaScript, and class is a reserved word in JavaScript, so they can't use class. That's why they have to have the class name and HTML4, all that stuff, because for is a reserved word in JavaScript, so they kind of get around that issue by using class name. Okay, so I'm going to take this out just to clean stuff up a little bit. And okay, so right now this is a functional component, and they don't talk about functional components this week, right? I don't think they.
No, they don't.
Yeah, I don't think they do. So I'm going to convert this to a class-based component. Okay, so I want you guys to help me out. So this right now it's a functional component, which we'll talk about. I think they talk about next week. How do I make this into a class-based component? Do you guys know what to do?
Class-based component. Well, then we have to.
It might be kind of a tough one if you're just starting out. So let me do that. So to make this a class-based component, we use the class keyword, right? It's class app, and then we use extends.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And React dot component. Okay. So every class-based component has to have a render method. So we can't just return JSX. We have to. It has to have a render method, and it has to return some JSX. Okay, so
so the syntax on that is always like that, always, because you can identify app as because I've noticed when I was watching the video, the word app has to be the same as on line 15, the word app. It has to match.
yes.
And if it doesn't, then it doesn't work.
Right. And yes, so this word has to match this word. Mm-hmm. But it also has to be capitalized. Okay, so that's very important because when we use JSX, the way Babel can tell the difference between HTML tags and actual components we're building is the components are capitalized. Okay, so basically what we're doing when we build a component, we're making our own sort of HTML tag. Okay, so that's one way to think about it. It's like we're going to be using our components just like we would HTML, just like we would put in an ordered list or an image or an anchor tag, right? All those things are just, they're HTML elements, but we're making a component that's kind of going to behave like an HTML element, okay? And I'll show you how that works in just a second. So right now I'm getting an error. Okay, so it says, failed to compile, line 419, React is not defined. Okay, so the reason I'm getting that is I'm extending the React component, which it has no idea what I'm talking about. So anytime we build a class-based component, we have to import React. So it's import React from React. Okay, and now the error should go away. Okay, so this is we're importing from the actual node modules folder. So when we do that, we don't have to put a path. It'll just know that if we have this string without any like directions to a certain file or directory, it'll know to look in the node modules folder for this. Okay. Any questions about that? Does that make sense? Okay.
So it's always like that. You always have to add that on the very top.
Yes, always. If you're building a class-based component, if you're making a functional component, it's not necessarily required. But yeah, for a class-based component, you definitely need to import React from React. Okay. Tony, how's it going?
Good.
All right. We're just building basically a simple app just as a demonstration, just to get practice.
Okay.
Okay, so another alternate syntax that you'll see is this is a default. Wait, I'm gonna mess it up. Default. Yes, this is a default export. So if we want to import a named export, which is the component here, the alternate syntax would be to do this. We put a comma, curly braces, and import component separately. Okay, so now we can just take this out and say extends, actually it's just extends component. Okay, so there's two different ways of doing that. This one is probably more common, but the other way would be to it's importing the React object and we're using the component class. Okay. Any questions about that? Okay, cool. All right, so now we have our app component. So I want to build another component. Let's just call it a parent component. Okay, so how do I want to basically make another component called parent that I want it to be just like this. So you guys walk me through it. How do I make another class-based component called parent?
Well, you would just do a class.
Okay. Class.
And then whatever the name is.
Okay.
They call it parent. And then just the curly braces, right?
Well, so I want it to be a class-based component. So.
Okay, then it'll be just component.
Extends component, right?
Yes, yeah. Extends and then the curly braces.
Okay.
And then also render, and then the close, yeah.
Okay.
And then
the constructor.
Okay, so we don't need a constructor yet. So we'll do the constructor, but let me just get. I want to just take baby steps and get this to render within this. Okay.
And then return
Okay.
the bracket, and also you can add a div in it too. The open.
Okay. Okay. And I'm just going to say parent component. Okay. So how do I get this class-based component, my parent component? Let me save this. How do I get this to appear on the screen? Like, how do I render it?
You have to put it in as a tag.
Okay.
So you can from the you put the greater sign and the
Okay.
less than greater and then slash
Like that?
yeah.
Okay. Is that going to do it?
No, but you have to do a parent class class name equals parent to call that.
Class
You
parent.
have to call that a class parent. Class name goes parent.
What do you mean?
Oh wait, okay. Actually, you did already. You did. Class name goes app.
Yeah.
Okay, so well, don't you have to put on the brackets, the curly braces? Put parent in the curly braces.
No. Okay. So if you were to if I wanted to have some JSX right here, or if I wanted to run some JavaScript right here, like if I just wanted to have like 2 + 2, right? Then I would have the curly braces. But if I've made a component, then I can just use that component just like I would any other HTML tag. So I just put the parent component in there. It's looks like a self-closing HTML tag. So this is the app is like the parent of the parent, right? And then it's rendering the parent, which is the child, right? So I know that's probably a bad choice of names, but the app is like I guess we call the app the root component, and then all the other components are rendered like the Russian dolls inside of it. Okay. So right now I have the parent component. So if we want to have, if the app is the highest component, right? If it's the root component, and we want to implement state, right? So what do you guys anybody want to take a stab at what state is? Like, what is the difference between state and props?
Yeah, honestly, I don't know what's the difference. I just know that you can type in like this dot prop or
Right.
this dot state.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Difference. When do you use one or the other?
So you're usually going to want to put your state as high up the chain of components as possible. So right now the app component is the highest because you want to trace it back from the index.js, right? The index.js is rendering the app component. That makes it the highest on the totem pole, if you will. So we have app, then we have parent. So if we want to pass something down, right? So state is passed down to children. We put our state in our app component and then pass it down to the parent or to the child.
Okay, well, so if the app is the root, if app is the top,
Uh-huh.
how, from reading the code, will it make a difference if you put that whole code block to the very top instead of you put it on the bottom?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
That might be less confusing, right? Let's do it that way. So, yeah, with JavaScript, the order doesn't matter, and that's I don't want to open that can of worms right now. But you can put functions and classes in any order with JavaScript. It doesn't affect anything. Okay, so the app is on top. So I want to implement state, right? So I want to keep track of some state. Okay, so state is basically mutable. Props are immutable. So the state is what, like if you wanted to have a counter that keeps track of a count, or you want to make a to-do list where the user can add an item to the to-do list, that would be managed by state. Okay. Props are what is passed down to the children, and it can be based on state or it can be based on some other factor, right? But usually it's going to be state that will be passed down as props. Okay, so let's start with coming up with a state. Okay, so we have a parent class, we have an app class, so I'm going to put my state in my app class. So how do I do that? How do I implement state?
This dot state.
Okay, so if we do this dot state, we need to make a constructor,
Okay.
right? So I'm gonna say constructor, and then what do I need to put inside the constructor?
Super.
Super.
Yeah, so
And what is it that gets passed to super?
Props.
Props. Okay. And we need to pass that to the constructor too, right? Okay. And then we have this dot state equals. And what data structure is state? What type?
You put curly. The curly brackets.
Right, curly braces. So state is always an object. Okay, so what should we keep track of?
you can try name. I don't know.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. It's going to be like, let me show you guys. I didn't show everybody, so just so everybody's on the same page. So this is kind of what we're building. We're just having a parent component, child components, and then all the names of the children will be stored in state. So we'll have Bobby, Jenny, Joey, Bonnie. Okay. So this is kind of what we're going for. Okay. So state dot. So the name is. Let's hard code a name. Like,
How about Jeremy?
I spelled that right? Yeah. Okay. Okay. So the name is going to be Jeremy. Okay. So I want to pass this down to my parent, right? So right now, just to keep track of what's happening, I'll use my console a lot. I do this a lot just to kind of keep track of what's happening. So I want to make sure that this is working. So I'm going to, right before the render, I'm just going to console log this dot state. Okay, so you'll see that as the app component renders, the render method gets invoked, and before it returns the JSX, it'll call this console log. So right now I'm console logging my state. So my state is an object with a property of name, and that name property has a value of Jeremy. Okay? So I want to tell the parent about this name, right? So I want to pass the state that I have in my app component down to my parent component. So how do I do that?
Well, don't you just do this dot state
Yes.
name.
Okay. Where?
Right after the parent tag.
Okay. After the parent tag or in the parent tag?
Oh, in the parent tag.
Okay.
Excuse me.
That's right. Okay, so I'm going to say name. Okay, but before I do that, let me just show you this. So I'm just going to console log inside the parent component this.props. Okay. So you'll see that here, without even passing anything, without adding anything to the parent component, it already has a this.props. It's just an empty object. Okay, everybody see that right here on line, I'm console logging line 26.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if I go into where I'm invoking the parent component, or when I'm, yeah, I guess invoking is a good word. I can set any, like, it's like an attribute, right? We say the name equals and then whatever we're passing down. So I can say name equals Tyler. Okay, so now when it renders, my name is set to the hard-coded string Tyler. Okay, but I want to pass down my state. So what do I put instead of Tyler to pass that down?
It would be curly bracket.
Okay.
This dot.
Oops.
State.name.
State.name.
Name.
Cool. Okay, cool. So now I'm getting the name equal to Jeremy. Okay, so the state is where I keep track of things. So right now we're just hard coding the string Jeremy, but we could have it be like if we had a box, an input box, and we wanted to ask the user their name, they typed it in, we could then store it right here. Okay. We'll get to that. I mean, that's 10 steps down the road, but that's where we would store any input. And then we would pass that down to the components that we wanted to pass it down to. Okay, cool. So now I have inside my parent component a this.props.name is being passed down as Jeremy. So how do I get Jeremy to show up inside my parent component?
Well, do you return this dot state dot name again?
Okay, so I could access. So I want it to show up right here, right? I want to have a p tag.
If you want that, then just put a bracket this dot state dot name.
This dot state dot name.
This dot oh, it's a prop.
Uh-huh. Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. Props
Yeah, props dot
name, right? There it is. There's Jeremy. So how, on a show of hands, how many of you understand this?
So I'm
How are you?
Yeah.
Say
I'm not understanding when to use state and when to use prop.
right. Okay. So state is state is what gets passed down. Okay. Props are what is consumed. Okay. So if I have my state in my app component, like I do, I pass it down as I want to say, okay, I want to tell the parent about my state, right? So I pass it down as this.state.name. When I consume it down here, when it's passed down, it's becomes a prop. Okay, so it's a state as long as it's hasn't been passed yet. Once it's passed, it becomes a prop. So you'll see I'm console logging this.props up here. I'm console logging this.state up here. Okay. Yeah. It's kind of just terminology you have to get used to. It's state is mutable, props is immutable. So once it gets set in its state, once the state is updated, it and it's passed down, it becomes like not set in stone, but it becomes more consistent. So basically, our app, because it's you think of the app as sort of like the brain of our application. It keeps track of the logic. It keeps track of the data, right? So the data gets passed down to the components that need it, but the components don't need to worry about like what's if it's changing or anything like that. The child components just sort of handle the data as it comes. Okay, so just sort of I don't know, other than like maybe making flashcards or something like that, just memorize that state is the data, props is how the data gets passed down.
So what do you mean by immutable and mutable? What does that mean?
So if I want to keep track of something, right? If I want to keep track of like so suppose I had a button here that counted just set like a counter. Let's just say that I had a button that would increment and decrement a counter. I would want to keep track of how like if the user just can click on either button. They can click to increment, they can click to decrement. If I want to keep track of that, that's what's mutable, right? That's what's changing in my app. So I would put that in state. Okay. Because we have which we'll get to, I think next week, we have a function called this.setState, which will allow us to we don't just have to hard code stuff here. We could have like, this could be an empty string and then we use this.setState and set it to whatever we want. Okay, so it's a bit confusing at this point because it's just hard coded. But we can use this as we use our state as where we manage the data, where we keep track of any changes in our data. Okay, so once this is passed down as to any other components, any child components, the parent component can't do anything to alter the name that is in state. Okay, so it can capitalize it or it can lowercase it. It can pop off a letter, but it can't change the state. Okay, so it's sort of the parent is dictating what the state is to the child. Okay, does that make sense? Or I hope
So I think so. So you're saying state is essentially set in stone.
props are set in. I don't want to say set in stone. They're state is mutable. State is how we manage data that changes. Props are what the parent component decides to pass down to its children if it decides to pass them down. Okay, and I guess we as programmers decide what to pass down.
I see.
Okay.
So props is higher up in the hierarchy than state.
I would think. What do you mean by higher up in the hierarchy?
Like it controls the state.
No, the state controls the props.
Oh, the state controls the prop.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So in this case, we had the apps component,
Uh-huh.
and we hard coded name goes Jeremy,
Yes.
and in this situation, this is a state
Yes.
because it is it doesn't is we're essentially making sure it doesn't change.
Yes. Yeah.
So how if we want to use a different name besides Jeremy, then how do we go ahead and do that? If since it's already hard coded, is there a way to do that, or it's already set?
There is a way to do that. So I mean, it would involve using. I'm trying to explain this without getting too much into like a far ahead of what you guys have learned, because they don't talk about this set state, right? This week, I don't think they do.
No, they don't.
Okay. Let me just. So if we wanted to have where's text? There we go. So it's a bit more involved, but I could have this work such that whatever I type in here, when I hit enter, it would set. I would start by having my name be an empty string, and then whatever is put into this text box would be set as the state.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so that's like an instant without I don't and doing that is like week 3. It's a little bit more involved. I don't want to get too deep into the weeds right now. But this would be an instance where we could use state to manage like if the user puts in data. Okay, so we would in this case we would have basically like a helper function that would do like handle name change. And then within this function, we would call this dot set state. Okay, and then we could just change once this happens. We would the state. It wouldn't happen in our code, but where the state gets managed in our app, the state would change to whatever we put in here, right? So if we had this wired up and I hit submit, then the name would change from Jeremy to Jenny. Okay. Okay. All right. So what I want to do now, let's have well, let me just. Do you guys have any questions about anything else? Is this helping? Do you have anything else you want me to see?
I think it's helping.
Okay, good. Okay, so let me take out the stuff that I don't need. This. That's my constructor. Oops. Okay, so I'm going to. We'll put name. No, I'm going to take this out. Okay. So I have a parent. I have my app. So is this the way it's done in React? Like, do we have our one class and another class in the same file?
Yeah.
So what do we usually do? Like, what usually the rule is like one per file, right? So how would I separate this out into another file?
And still be able to call that?
Yeah.
Well, then you would have to like import it, right?
Uh-huh.
Well, do you have to import that into the other? Well, input it to the file you want to use it.
Right. So let's go ahead and, but before we put the cart before the horse, I'm going to make a new folder called components. And I'm going to make a new file called parent. Okay. And I'm going to just take my parent out. And just paste it in here. And I'm going to go back and I'm going to take this so I have it. So I'm just going to copy this so the parent has access to it. Okay. Okay, so now it's complaining. So I'm calling the parent component, but it doesn't see it. So how do I tell this file about this file?
So you would import the parent.js in here.
Okay. So I'm going to import parent, right?
Mhm.
From
parent.js.
Okay. Okay. So this can't resolve parent.js.
Do you not find the file?
Yeah.
You need to type in like period slash
Uh-huh.
Parent.js.
yeah,
Oh, src.
Okay, we're in the src file folder. So
SRC. Okay.
so that's cool.
Component.
Right.
Uh-huh. Components.
Components.
Yeah.
There.
parent.js. Yeah.
And we don't need the .js. It'll know to look for .js. Okay. Can't resolve parent.js. Let's see if we refresh it. What did I do? Did I stop?
Uh,
I think my server might have stopped. Oh, it did. Okay. That's weird. Okay. Attempted import error. ./components/parent does not contain a default export.
you probably don't need a dot at this point. It's just probably /component.
No, that's not the issue. So, let me try to do this. Open
Your relative path.
split right. Okay, so what's missing? So here's my app.js. Here's my parent.js. What does this file have that this one doesn't? Excuse me. Read the error message.
It doesn't have the export default.
Exactly. So JavaScript does this on purpose. So they don't want you to just randomly use stuff in a file. You have to export it manually. So we say export default and then the name of whatever we're exporting. Okay? And now it's just fine. So basically what we've done, if we have this import parent, right, this line right here is the exact same thing as if we had cut this code out and pasted it in here. Okay, it's just like it's just a kind of a bookkeeping way to clean up our file. So we can import whatever we need from different files. That way our one file doesn't get cluttered up. because it would be 10,000 lines of code in one file, which is impossible to manage. So just to keep everything clean, we have this import syntax. Does that make sense, Tony? Yeah? Okay. All right, so now I want to make a child component. So how do I do that? I want to basically have my child. So instead of like hard coding this, right? So let me put the name back so we can see what's going on. Name is Jeremy. Okay. So what I want is, instead of it being this.props.name, I want to have like a child component for each of my different children. Okay, so what I want is like, in my state, I want to have children that will be an array of objects. So each child will have a name, and an age. How old should Jeremy be?
Say 12.
12. And he's going to have a sister. I'm going to call her Jenny. How old should Jenny be?
15.
18?
15.
15, okay. Cool.
That's fine.
All right. So we have Jenny and Jeremy. Now it's going to break. So how do I... let's keep it simple. So for right now, I'm passing down this.props.name, which isn't even a thing anymore, right? So if I open my console, now when I console log this where am I? Yeah, if I'm console logging this.props, I get an object, but it doesn't have anything in it because name, I'm passing down name is equal to this.state.name. So how do I pass the children down to the parent?
Do we put this dot state dot children dot name?
Okay, let's start with children. Why didn't that work? This.state.children. Oh, because I'm trying to print it. There we go. Okay. So now I have this.state.children, and I have, if I console.log that and I pass it down, I have, why do I have it name? Oh, because this name. Okay, so I want to change this. So right now it's what's being passed down is I'm calling it name, but it's the array of the two children, right?
Yeah.
So I want this to be more descriptive. So what would I change name to have it make more sense? Because I can call this anything I want. I can call this Joe, right? And now Joe's going to be set to my array. This is an array of children. So what should I change Joe to make it more have it make more sense?
Say like children.
Like children, yeah. Okay, so now I have my children. So if I were to say, if I passed it down as this.state.children.name, what would that be? What would happen?
Well, you get 12 and 15.
If I say name?
Oh no! You'll get Jenny and Jeremy listed.
Let's see what I get. Undefined. Why am I getting undefined? So what is this dot state dot children? What data structure is it?
Well,
So what is this dot state dot children?
It's
it's an array.
It's an array, right? So I'm trying to pull off a name property. I'm trying to pull a name property off of an array, and it doesn't.
Oh,
It doesn't. It doesn't have a name property. So that's why we're getting undefined. Okay, so all we can do right now is pass the children down as an array. And now children is my array of children. Okay, so now in order to get what you're talking about, trying to get the name off, we need to iterate through this array with a array method like map or filter or reduce, okay? Or any other array method that JavaScript has. Does that make sense?
I see. Yeah.
Okay.
So we will have to do like the children dot map.
Yes. Yes. So right now I have this dot. Let me just refresh so we can see what we're getting. So right here on line 6, I'm console logging my props. So I have this dot props is equal to an object with a children property that's set to an array of children as its value. Okay, so if instead of logging props, I do props.children. So that's what I want, right? I want to get at that array so I can step through it and pull off the child name and age, okay? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So,
So if we want to pull only Jeremy,
yes.
we have to use a map function.
Actually, that would be much easier. If we just want Jeremy, how would I get to the first element of this array?
by choosing the 0.
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
So if I set this to, if I take the 0 index of that, right, that gives me the object with Jeremy in it. So now I can say, let me close this. Now I can say dot name
And get only Jeremy.
and get only Jeremy. So now what I could do is inside my p tag, I could just use the JSX to interpret. It's like kind of like interpolation, but to render any sort of JavaScript expression. I'm going to copy this, paste it in here, and then we get Jeremy. Okay.
Okay. So if we're going to use the map function.
Yes, that's because we don't want to leave Jenny out, right? She's sitting there like crying because we left her out of the program. So I'm going to take out my p tag for now, and I'm going to put these back in. So I have my array that I want to iterate over is this dot props dot children, right? Children. Okay. If I try to render this, it's going to complain. It doesn't like that I'm trying to render an array. So I want to say children.map because that's my array that I want to iterate over. Okay. So this .props.children is an array of children. So each item is going to be a child. And then for each item in my array, I want to return some JSX. Okay, so I'm going to have it be a div. I don't know why Emmett's not working. Div It's not working at all. And I'm just going to say child.name. Then I get Jeremy and Jenny. Okay.
What if you did like this dot props dot children dot name?
This dot props dot children dot name would be then I would say, like right here where my cursor is.
No, instead of calling child dot name, what if you typed in the whole thing? Yeah, and child dot name.
Because this, if child.name, you would be putting, I don't know, let's see. It's going to error out because, yeah, so I'm trying to pull a property off of this in the argument of the function, and it's not liking that. So you can't do this sort of operation in the argument of a function. So what child is, let me do this. Before I return, I'm going to console log child. Okay, so on line 12, basically every time child, it goes through my array, right? And so the first step through the array, child is equal to this. Okay, I'm trying to highlight it, but it's not working. But this. So the second step through the array, it's equal to this. So the first time through, it's going to say, okay, child is equal to this object. And I'm going to return a div with the child.name. The next, and it's going to be equal to Jeremy. The next step through, child is going to be equal to this object. And you're returning a div with child.name. Okay, so I'm going to put this in a p tag. Paste. And I'm going to so each time through, instead of just pulling off the name, I'm going to pull off the age too. Save. Oh, I put ages. There we go. So now it's the first step through, it's child is equal to this object, and it says child.name is in a p tag and child.age is in a p tag. And I can make it a little more clear by saying name and age. Okay. Any questions about that? Does that make sense? Sort of, kind of?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So So let's say I want to add a child component, right? So and I should probably choose different names, but I have a parent component and I want to separate some of this logic into a new component that just handles the child's name and age. Okay? You follow what I want to do?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So you want to break it down to a different file?
Yeah, so I want to have, instead of having this right here, I want to basically make this into its own component, and I can just pass in name and age and have it automatically work.
Okay.
So basically I want the parent to actually be a parent of the child component.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to make a new file called child. And let's just do the skeleton of a class-based component. So how do I make a class-based component? What's the first thing I need?
Class. Child.
Okay.
Don't we need to call it class name?
No, that's only if you put it in a tag.
You know, give me just, I'm sorry, 1 second. My wife's calling. Let me just make sure everything's okay. I'm sorry about this.
Okay.
Oh, there it is. Just give me 1 second. Hello, is everything okay? I'm just finishing up. Okay, I'll call him when I'm off, when I'm done. It's all, I know. Okay. 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 Penny's upstairs. Okay. 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 Okay, I'll call. Okay, all right. I will. Okay. I will. I gotta finish up my session, and then I'll call him. Okay. 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 I will. Okay. Love you. Bye. Come on. No. Sorry, it's hard to manipulate things when you're sharing the screen. It's like it blocks certain stuff. So, okay, how you guys doing?
Good.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll do the child, and then we'll call it a night because it's probably
Okay.
okay. So I made my child. Where's my child? Here we go. Okay, so
So shouldn't this be class child
Yeah, class
render extend?
React dot component.
Extend React.
Yeah. And then
okay,
versus
okay, and what does every class-based component have to have? What
return. Is it return or render?
render? Right. Every has to have. That's the only required method for a class-based component. It has to have a render method. And it has to return. What does the render method have to return?
Return bracket and then after that you need to have a div.
Right. Has to just return some JSX, right? Okay. Now, am I done?
That,
No, because don't you have to put the child in the curly bracket.
Right. So I want to import my child component into my parent component, right? So how do I do that? How do I set it up so that first of all the code in here can be exported and I can import it into here? So what do I need? to make sure that I can export my child.
Okay. Oh, you need to have the
The export by the bottom.
Right.
bottom,
Export default
yeah,
child, right?
yeah,
Mhm.
Okay. Okay, now how do I import it into the parent?
You type in import. Then the file name, which is child.
Okay.
What was that?
And then you have to go like dot slash.
Yeah.
Okay, but I need another keyword before I do the dot slash. What is import child
From,
and then
and then it's a component dot / components, and then the file name, which is child.
Slash child dot JS.
okay. Okay. So you'll notice that the child and the parent are in the same file. I'm sorry, in the same directory. So we don't need to tell it. So it's basically what we're saying is in this directory, look for another directory called components and look for child in there. So we're sending it kind of on this wild goose chase, right? We're saying the dot says this directory, the slash says look at another directory, and in that directory is where our file is, right? So we're basically confusing it. So we don't need the components because we're in the same file. Okay. Now it says failed to compile. This is where the error happened. It happened on line 3, and it says React is not defined. So let's go into the child component and see what's going on. So at 3 it says React is not defined, which is right here. It doesn't know what we're talking about.
What do we? I don't think we need the React dot components. We just need a component.
Well, so if we made this a functional component, yes, but I don't want to confuse you by making a functional component. Let's keep it all class components for now. So if we're making a class component, what do we need to import? We need to tell, we can't just start using React dot something, right? We have to tell it what React is. So to do that,
we could import React.
yes.
So we need to type in import React.
And then if it's in the node modules folder, all we have to do is just say the name of the file where it lives. Okay. And now it's happy. Okay, so now going back to the child, right? Or the parent component. So how do I so I want to set up the child component to basically, when I iterate over my array, I want to just be able to pass the child in and have it come out looking like this. Okay, so let's start with, okay, so I'm just going to call the child and have it show up for each one of these. So I'm just going to call this, I'm going to call my child right here. Okay, so now this is what my child is rendering right here. So where it says child. So basically each time through I'm rendering my child component and I'm rendering the 2 paragraph tags. Okay, so what I want to do is move this code into my child. So it doesn't, basically each time I can pass in like child equals child, right? Child just, okay. And have it just sort of render my child. Does that make sense?
So you just want to be able.
So I want to be able to take this out. I want to be able to move this to my child and have it just look the exact same way. Have it be.
Okay. Well, then don't we just call that using in the tag, the p tag? Just type in child. This dot child dot name.
Well, so let's go into I'm going to go into my child and I'm going to see. So right now I'm passing like as a kind of an attribute, right? I have child and I'm passing in the child that gets iterated over, right? So I'm just going to see what my child is getting. So I'm going to console .log this .props. Okay, so you'll see that what's happening down here, I'm getting a child that has a property called child that has the array.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I want to so this.props.child, I'm going to say this.props.child is, there we go. Cool. So the first time through, child gets this one, the Jeremy, it gets Jeremy, and the second time through it gets Jenny. So I can just to see what I would get if I put this in there, I would say this.props.child.name. Okay, now it's working. So I'm going to take this code and I'm going to cut it and I'm going to paste it right here. Okay, so now it's complaining because all I'm saying is child. So if I put this dot props in front of each of these, now it works. Questions? Comments, concerns? Have I totally lost you?
So I don't understand why you still have the div, the child, the word child after the div. Can't you just take that out?
Sure can.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. I was just doing that just to help me keep track of like what's happening. And let me see if I do this. So we're cool. So it works. So each time I'm iterating through my children, I'm basically passing it down to the child component.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, and then whatever I get, sorry. So whatever gets passed down to child, right? I have access to by using this.props.child. And then I'm basically doing this. I'm just basically putting all of the functionality into its own component. So I can reuse child anywhere else in my app if I need to.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay. So I've recorded this, so you guys, if you can watch it again if you want, I'll put it on YouTube. Every time I do that, I feel a little sad because my daughter posts videos about unicorns and gets 20 times the views that I get. But I guess people care more about unicorns than than learning React. So, but yeah, I'll put it on there so everybody else can watch it. You guys can watch it again, and again, we'll go over this tomorrow. So,
Yeah.
Okay.
I think this is helping Tyler. Just watching you do this and talking it through, even though I'm far from able to write this myself, but at least I'm more or less able to follow along and in my mind guess what comes next.
Yeah.
What right or wrong, but at least I'm able to kind of see you do it, and in my mind, if I'm wrong, then I know that I'm way off.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I would recommend doing this yourself. Just, if you can't figure out how like the props get passed, I mean, that's why I do the console logs all the time, because I can't keep straight in my head like what is getting passed down and where. And this helps me a lot. There's other ways to do it that using the browser and using the React developer tools. I like to do it the old-fashioned way, I guess. But if you guys want to explore the React developer tools, that may work better for you. But yeah, I recommend doing this. Just get it to be, just practice nesting components within components, and then just build. Because you learn by doing it. I mean, that's basically, you could watch me do it all day long, but until you actually get your hands dirty, it doesn't really,
Yeah.
get cemented. So, all right, guys. So, thank you so much for attending. I apologize again for last night. So I
No worries.
got to go, and the dog drama continues. So that's what my wife.
Yeah,
My-
for having this, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Oh yeah, definitely. So yeah, have a good night, and I'll see you guys bright and early tomorrow.
All right. Thanks.
All right.
All right, see ya.
Bye bye.